was in a seminar where we talked about this. I'm like, hey, how do you get over that awkward, like, all right, we just connected, we're having a good conversation. All right, I'm gonna hit record, and then all of a sudden, 5, 4, and everybody tenses up. And so basically the answer I got was like, just understand that the first like couple minutes are probably gonna be thrown away anyways. So no pressure. So my bad. I didn't mean to, take over as soon as you hit record, but
no, you're good. You're good, Andrew.
By all means, go for it, brother.
No, it's well, I'll say my intro. Welcome everyone to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. Your host Travis. Today I have a special guest with Andrew from Mark Bell's Power Project, the DMs, online content creator, super great guy. I'm very fortunate to have him on the show today. But before we get into Andrew, I need you to give me a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this, Spotify, iTunes, Podchaser, whatever it is. Also, if you guys want to support the show, you can check out my merch, elbowstight.com. If you want the sweet dad hat, I got some shirts and stuff like that. And then also follow me, Elbows Tight, everywhere if you guys haven't already. But with that being said, now all the logistical stuff out of the way. Andrew, bro, how's it going today? We've already been talking for like 10, 15 minutes about parenting and everything like that, but how you doing?
It's going well, man. I'm glad we got all the dad situation stuff taken care of, and now we're locked in and we're able to hang out together. So I'm really grateful, and I really appreciate you for inviting me onto the show today.
No, I appreciate your time, man. Make sure those 3 doors are locked with deadbolts.
So no lie, the reason why I'm so proud of this, so just so, if you're listening, you're like, what are they talking about? I was bragging about the fact that I have 3 doors that separate me and the rest of the house, right? That might sound a little like mean, like, what, you want to be away from your family? It's like, well, no, that's not the case, but
a little bit.
When I'm getting work done, right? That's when it's like, no, actually, yeah, I do need to be alone. Like, I can't, in not being so dramatic, but like, I can't take over the world if my son's right here wanting me to, like, play a game with him or something, right? So I have to keep the separation there. And that actually came from advice from a millionaire, the guy that created Quest Nutrition, right?
Oh, wow.
So the original guy, he was like, we were kind of in this little, like, his office, we're just chit-chatting. And he just like broke down. He's like, oh, you guys got to get rich. What you need to do is you need to create a 5 by 5 foot door, or 5 feet thick, and like he's like, you need to barricade yourself away from your kids. And when it comes to bedtime, you need to make sure that you're far away from them, so that way you can get sleep, because you're not going to conquer anything if you can't sleep and they're bugging you all day. And I'm like, man, that sounds crazy, but now I know that he was correct.
Yeah, I like we mentioned beforehand too. I record in my master bedroom, which is upstairs, and usually my kids are always downstairs, so that's kind of nice. And I have a baby gate at the bottom of the stairs too, so they can't come up. But sometimes they be getting buck wild downstairs while I'm recording, and I'm like, "Do you hear that?" And they're like, "No, I don't hear anything." I'm like, all right, cool. Thank God for dynamic microphones. But
yes.
But my office, I have an office downstairs that is turned into a bedroom right now for family. And that used to be like my podcast studio. If you guys watch back, like a year, 2 years ago, I had a whole setup. It was beautiful downstairs, but life changes, and I had to turn over my man cave.
Yeah.
But now I just do it in my master bedroom. But it's like first world problems that we're talking about, right? Like, no, I have to record my remote podcast in my studio or my master bedroom. But I'm very grateful for being able to do this. But you've been in the podcast game for a while too. Before we get into the jiu-jitsu, how'd you become a podcaster?
Yeah. I'll be as quick as possible. But basically, like, I've been in content creation for over 13 years now, and it started with just photography. So I've always loved photos, and I've always loved taking photos. And so, like, every chance I got when I wasn't clocked in, and even though I would kind of watch tutorials like while I was working at my 8 to 5 job, but the second I clocked out, I was perfecting my craft, trying to be the best photographer possible. Eventually, with the support of my back then girlfriend, now wife, she like pushed me to start like booking actual clients and stuff. And I'm working on it, but I used to be extremely timid, super like shy, and I wouldn't want to talk to people. So the thought of me like asking people to pay me for photos that I wasn't even sure of was a huge step, but she helped me along the way. I started booking like, just simple like portrait sessions, like whatever it was I can get my hands onto, I would start shooting those photos. I started doing weddings, and so stuff started like really taking off, because if you're a wedding photographer, like especially if they're like first time newlyweds, they're getting married at early 20s or whatever. Well, they all have friends that are about to get married as well. So as you go to one wedding, you kind of get within that whole like network of people. So you start getting hired to do multiple weddings, and then you start seeing the same people at all these weddings, and like, oh yeah, you're the guy, you're the photographer, like you do such a good job. Can you do this one, or can you do this birthday party, whatever? So I started building a cool little, business for myself, and then I'm just trying to get more ways of, you know, more revenue streams or more just opportunities to shoot more photos. I actually had an opportunity to ask Mark Bell at one of the seminars at the old super training gym, like, hey, do power lifters need photos taken? And, he was like, no, they don't. And I'm like, dang, all right, well, so much for that. I'm like, that was cool. But then he responded with, powerlifters don't need photos taken, but I need a photographer. Like, do you have a card, whatever it was? And so we ended up connecting. I worked for about a month and a half, not really asking for any pay, just again, happy to have the opportunity. A little bit after that, he offered me a full-time position. And so I started working at Super Training Gym and Slingshot full-time as just a photographer. That quickly turned into photographer, like graphic designer, videographer, editor, all the things that have anything to do with content creation, which was cool because I loved all of it. And then eventually fast forward a couple years and the Power Cast was kind of dismantling and the Power Project was starting up, but there was no producer. And I was like, dude, oh my God, like that's meant for me. And so like I cornered him in his office one day. We were probably filming like a vlog or something, and we wrapped up. And I was basically like, hey dude, I know you need a producer for the podcast. I'm the guy for it. And he's just like, all right, cool. I don't need to find anybody. Like, I don't need to hire anybody else. I'll just have you do it too. And so I was like, sick. I don't know how to run a podcast. I don't know anything about it. I need to figure this all out. So I went to YouTube University and I just started watching videos. Got some help along the way, but pretty much everything from photography to videography, editing, casting, all of it's been self-taught because I'm really passionate about it and I really enjoy it. So I haven't really needed like a kick in the butt to, work hard at doing it. So all of it, again, self-taught, and that's the short version of it all. Is I basically just kind of like, kind of made the position happen. And then fast forward a little bit further now, and I'm no longer an employee of Super Training and Slingshot. Me, Mark Bell, and Nsima Inyang all co-own Mark Bell's Power Project
That's
podcast.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's its own thing now. So it's pretty cool to like be a business owner. And then more recently, I've opened up pursuepodcasting.com. It's like a teaching platform where I educate and show people basically how to do what you and I are doing without doing all the mistakes that I made, kind of streamline things. So that way, you can just get all the wins, none of the losses that we've faced over the years. And so, yeah, that's kind of the short version of it all. And I'm super grateful every day I wake up and I'm like, I can't believe I get to wake up and do this. It really is incredible.
Yeah, man, I felt the calling to help. I mean, people always, even bigger podcasts in my niche have reached out to me and asked questions about, hey, how do you do video? How do you do this? What tech do you use? And blah blah
Sick.
blah. And I always tell people when they first start, I'm like, look, man, I've been doing this since 2017, 2018 at the podcast itself. And but been in content creation since like 2016, 2017. I used to stream on Twitch and whatnot, and so I did a lot of trial and error before doing that. So when I started the podcast, I was like, oh, I've already done this for a couple of years. Like it was easier for me to go over. But I always tell people like, hey man, like you don't need a bunch of you'll see like my gear or like these bigger podcasts, and you'll see like, oh man, they have a Shure SM7B. Oh man, they have Blackmagic 4Ks. They have all this fancy stuff. And you're like, you don't need any of that. Get a good single light, an all right sounding microphone, and then use a webcam on your computer. Or you could pick up a Logitech like C920 for like $50, and that's going to be more than enough. Lighting is more. And they're like, oh, I thought it was way harder than that. Like, no, dude. I was like, content is king. As long as you're good at your job, people are going to tune in. You know what I mean? Like you need to hone the craft of podcasting, not of creating content. That comes after you learn how to host a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right on point. And one thing that I started like really digging and starting to push people towards is like if they're going to do something like we're doing right now remotely on Riverside, or even if it's just by yourself on Riverside, using your iPhone. If you
Yeah,
have, I think it's like
I
iPhone,
can.
yeah, like iPhone 13 and up, you can just like it picks it up automatically and it looks incredible. And you don't get any of the hassle of having to deal with like a gigantic file on your phone, then transferring it over. It's already in Riverside. That's incredible. And then since we're going down this path, the microphone I'm using right now is only like $70. It's a Samsung Q2U. Once you know this microphone, you recognize it everywhere because it's so freaking popular and so well done. We were joking on Instagram because I think it cost like $240 or $250 microphone from Shure. No hate, if Shure's listening. Yes, I do want that sponsorship, but I was running some tests and the audio quality is so negligible. Like nobody would be able to tell the difference between a $70 microphone and a $250 microphone. The only difference is the pickup pattern on that one. I'd have to have the microphone completely covering my face right now to
Oh
get that
yeah.
sweet spot, versus these condenser microphones that are only going to pick up, sound from the front, none from the back. That one was like, it was so big, and I'm like, "Oh, this will be sick for a video podcast where nobody gets to see what I look like. Like, this is dope." So I scratched that, and so again, I went with the cheaper version because it sounded pretty much just as good, but also was just better suited for a video podcast. And it was the cheaper one, right? Like I didn't opt for the more expensive one. This is better.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like, if you have a if you do like any hobby, you can make content out of it too. Like, it's
Mm,
like people, and it's easy too. So easy nowadays compared to starting off, 8, 10 years ago. Anyone could be a content creator. Anyone can have an audience and stuff like that. And, people, my buddy that I was in the Navy with, he saw that I was doing elbows tight and he's like, man, if Travis has a podcast, I can do a podcast. And I'm like, 100%. I would take that as an insult. Like you could 100% do it. If you have something to say, then make a podcast. Like,
mhm,
the old adage is just like, oh, everyone has a podcast. Like, yeah, but it's an easy medium to get in touch with people, and it's
mhm.
simple. It's just audio. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so just again, I love that we're going down this path. So sorry if you're listening, hoping to get some jujitsu stuff right
We'll
away.
get there.
Yeah, we will get there, I promise. Because I'm still at that stage where like the jujitsu bug hit me to where like we're talking about, I don't know, sports or something. But hey, yeah, that's pretty cool. But do you know anything about jujitsu? I
Have you met my Lord and Savior Jiu-Jitsu?
exactly. So I'm still there. So trust me, we're gonna get there. Um, but I just happen to really love podcasting and stuff. And I actually lost my train of thought. What were you saying? You were saying
Oh,
that.
anyone
Oh,
can be
yeah,
a
sorry,
content
that's what it is.
creator.
So yes, it does seem like everybody does have a podcast, right? It's a meme at this point, right? Where you talk about like having a podcast. But of the like roughly 4 million podcasts that are in the United States right now, only like 44% of them have 3 episodes or less. Sorry, so like almost half of them were like one and done.
Mhm.
And then if you take that a step further, only like around 156,000 podcasts in the United States have 10 episodes and have continued to publish on a weekly basis. So again, this is something I like to say, that while it seems like there are millions of podcasters out there, almost none of them are actually podcasting. So it right, there is the top 1% of podcasts that do get almost all the attention, or not all the attention. They get a lot of attention. But when you look at YouTube, Instagram, all these things, the amount of people listening to podcasts versus people that are putting out content is so lopsided. So it's actually the most wide open medium in the world to create content on, especially if you have something to say. It's irresponsible of you to not have a podcast. Even if you just have a hobby you want to talk about, like, dude, you don't know who you're going to impact. You don't know
Mhm.
who you could potentially inspire. The reach on a podcast is ridiculous. So yeah, again, like if you have something to sell, I mean, that's really easy. If you have a message that you need to get out there, you absolutely need to freaking have a podcast. And again, if you there's a lot of really bad hobbies that you can have instead of a podcast. At least this one will be somewhat productive. It'll bring you some enjoyment. It'll connect you with some really cool people. And then who knows, you down the road, you could potentially be sponsored and actually making money off of it. Just endless opportunities with podcasting.
Yeah, and I've got to talk to some incredible people within the jiu-jitsu industry, and then people that I've known of since I came from CrossFit, right? So it's like I got to talk like Jason Kalipa, you know what I mean? Like I got to chat with him for an
Mhm,
hour, hour and a half, and I was like, "There's the only reason that happened is one because of jiu-jitsu, and the two because I have a podcast. Otherwise,
mhm.
like there would be no reason for him to want to chat with me."
Yeah, no,
So that's been
ah,
like super cool too.
Jason's such a cool dude, white belt mentality. He
Yeah.
is always fired up. I've never seen him tired despite having the craziest workouts. He is just always 1,000 miles per hour. One of the best dudes on the planet. I love that guy. He's incredible.
Yeah, you guys have had him on the show quite a few times too.
Yeah, a bunch of times. He actually texted me the other day, and I forgot to get back to him.
Well, what's up, Jason? You should
Yeah,
come back
my
on the
bad.
show.
It was looking for some media stuff, so that was my bad.
No, but it's like, have you ever during your time with the Mark Bell podcast or Power Project, has there ever been like a guest that you guys have had that you were like, "Holy crap, we're about to talk with this person"?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Who was it?
1,000%. Um, it did take a lot of the edge off by hanging out with him and realizing that he's just one of us. Like, this is like, we've had guests where we kinda like, all right, we have to, like, kinda be, I'll say, politically correct, or we just kinda, like, have to button up our shirts and, not tell dick jokes and, you just kinda gotta read the room a little bit. With this guest, instantly, and it'll make sense when I say who it is, but, like, we didn't have to hide anything about who we were. We were instantly bros, and it was just like it took off. But even with all that, as we're podcasting, I'm, like, thinking in my head, like, "Oh my god, I watched this dude's specials so many times. This is the funniest person I know, and I cannot believe I am sitting here talking to him." And that, of course, is Tom Segura. Like,
Oh, nice.
I
Yeah.
was like, it was definitely an "oh shit" moment where I was just like, "Dude, this is, all because I learned how to use a camera? Like, this is weird." And, it was a great podcast. It was actually filmed in Nick Bear's studio. I think maybe an older studio now, but, so it wasn't with any of my equipment, so I had all my road equipment, not Road the brand, but, like, on the road equipment, and I was all, like, ready to go, and then Mark was like, "Hey, how about we just, like, ditch all that and instead we use clip-on mics?" And I'm like,
Do
and
you
so
know how
anybody
hard this is gonna be?
if you know what that life is like when you have 2 lapel mics, the echo and all that stuff, will now add 2 more and then put yourselves in a small room around a small table where you're gonna have a lot of the reverb coming in and out from an untreated room and a hard surface, and then also just the omnidirectional microphone, in case anybody's curious, like omni meaning like they just pick up sound from kind of all over the
Everywhere.
place.
Mhm.
So if I have somebody next to me speaking, my microphone picks up, and then when I speak, his microphone picks me up. So it was just nothing but a freaking gigantic file of echoes. And there was no wide shots because it was such a small room. So it was a bit of a nightmare getting it all prepared. And so it was one of those things where, like, I was just thinking in my head, I'm not going to celebrate until I literally have this thing published, because so many things can go wrong from now and then. And, I did my best. The audio it had some issues, and it pushed me to get even better with my audio production, which is cool. But it all worked out, and it was freaking cool. And he is one of the best dudes. He's so incredible. He is funny, obviously, but like he like, we didn't have to fake who we were. We didn't have to pretend. In my opinion, it didn't look like he was putting on a show for anybody. And we were just all training together and just hanging out. And he's somebody that you can be like, yeah, he's actually just as cool as he is, or as you would hope so, right?
Yeah. So when you started the podcast, obviously you didn't start doing jujitsu until what, like 2, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it'll be, we're in October, so by the end of this month, it'll be 2 years.
And Simo was just training the entire time that you guys have been doing the podcast. How come you never took it up earlier, especially with like a specimen of a human being telling you about it all the time?
Yeah, no, great question. I, kind of going back to, again, what I said in the beginning, like, I was very timid, very shy person. I loved sports growing up, but once I got into junior high, all the kids were freaking mutants compared to what I was. Right in elementary school and kind of those ages, I was always the best not almost. Take that back. I was always one of the better ones on all my teams. Didn't matter the sport. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that like I could run straight, I could catch a ball, I could throw a ball, right? Like I can take instruction and I wasn't like getting distracted when a butterfly would, come by. But when I got into junior high, these kids were bigger, stronger, faster than me. And I'm like, whoa, like it was like leaps and bounds better than me. And it sucks to admit it, but like instead of taking that as something to lean into and be like, no, I need to work harder and get better so that way I can at least compete, I was like, oh shit, I got no chance. I'm going to go play Madden on PlayStation because I'm really good at that. I suck at this now, so I'm done with it. So from, I want to say, I think it was 8th or ninth grade all the way till I was like 27, I didn't like really do anything. Like I stopped exercising, I stopped playing sports, I stopped moving. That created a crazy chain reaction and being out of shape, back pain for almost 2 decades. Obviously I had no confidence, so a huge lack in confidence. Also another reason why I probably got divorced early on. Again, a huge cascade of negative things because I felt I wasn't adequate enough at competing amongst other kids my age. So now fast forward, kind of getting back into the gym and stuff and feeling confident, still have a lot of back pain, but the thought of grappling with another man, it didn't terrify me. It's just like, it's so freaking uncomfortable. And the thought of like, oh dude, what if like, you get into like a weird position, all of a sudden they got a triangle and like I got balls in my face and I got someone else's sweat dropping into my mouth or whatever it is, like you
all real concerns.
But your mind goes to the worst spots, right? What if I'm tapping and they don't want to, I piss them off or something and they don't let go? And then also, again, being super unhealthy, but leaning in towards like all the stuff that made me feel good. So lots of alcohol. Like I drank pretty much every night for a bunch of years straight. And I couldn't figure out why every time I'd go bar hopping with friends, somebody would always try starting shit with me. And it's like, oh, because you're an easy target, dude. You're tall, skinny, scrawny, way out of shape. You're not going to hurt anybody. So that's why it's like, oh yeah, let's go pick on this little guy. So a lot of it just kind of led me to not have confidence to want to actually start. And yeah, Nsima would recommend it all the time. And I'm like, oh man, like that's not for me. That's not for me. So it was, there was a lot of good influences around me to want to start it. And it was in the back of my mind, but I was always just literally just too afraid to walk into a jiu-jitsu school and get started.
Do you think if you had anyone besides Nsima saying it to you, because Nsima's a huge guy, and did you think that kind of psychologically, like, well, is Nsima like the normal person that's going to be there? Like, was that ever played through your mind too?
No, absolutely. That's a great point. So I was actually going to mention that too. Right. When somebody that is a specimen like Nsima, somebody that, you know, he works extremely hard. I watched this dude train every day. I watched him when he was powerlifting and how hard he would work in the gym at super training. And then he carried out that same intensity over into jiu-jitsu. So I'm not taking anything away from him. But when you just look at somebody that way, you look at somebody that's younger, they're taller, they're handsome. they're not in
check.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All the boxes checked. Smart, well read. Also, most importantly for me was not in pain, right? So I'm like, oh, of course you can do it. I had labeled myself as somebody that was incapable of those things because I also identified with my back pain. I can do this, I can do that, but I can't do that because of my back, right? Like, oh yeah, I wish I could, but I can't because of my back. So it was my identity, and that's what it was that prevented me from, looking at somebody like Nsima and seeing that like, oh wait, no, I can do it too. But I think maybe if there was somebody next to him that, wasn't as, big and strong and handsome telling me like, hey, you probably should do it, maybe that would have swayed me a little bit faster, but I didn't have that.
Real quick, let's talk about the importance of salt and electrolytes for a BJJ practitioner. And that's where today's sponsor, Salt Electrolytes, come in. Save 15% off your purchase at saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout. Once again, that's 15% off at saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout. Or use the link down below. Now, Salt Electrolytes drink mix is designed for today's warriors, athletes, and those who like to get after it and regularly get sweaty. Whether you're a heavy sweater that we've all seen on Instagram that needs a wet floor sign right next to them whenever they roll, or you're like a normal human being like me who barely sweats at all. With a light, refreshing flavor, salt is great to drink during your workout because it will not coat your mouth that thick, nasty film that some electrolytes drinks out there do. It has the perfect saltiness that's as easily to make you want to drink more, making rehydration a breeze. And salt keeps it simple, guys. There's only 6 different electrolytes with a touch of iodine to help maintain a healthy thyroid. There's no sugars, there's no colors, and there's no BS. So go earn your salt, guys and gals. And save 15% off your checkout at saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout. That's saltelectrolytes.com with code ElbowsTight15 at checkout to save 15% off. Because your electrolyte drink should work just as hard as you do. Thanks, guys. Go check them out. Did you ever, before you actually started training jiu-jitsu, what was the lead up like? Did you go check out any academies just to kind of fill that little bit of curiosity first, or did you just jump straight into your class when you first started?
Yeah, there was a couple of exposures to it. So my buddy Nico, he was an MMA fighter, and he trained at the same place that Nsima trained at. And I would just help him do a couple of different fight promos and stuff. And so I would go to his jiu-jitsu classes and I would film. And I remember I was so thrown off because in my head, what I'm thinking a jiu-jitsu school was basically a room full of bullies bullying each other until somebody gives up or they turn into a bully themselves. That's what I thought it was. It was like, hey, we're going to throw you in the fire. If you're one of us, you'll survive. If not, there's the door. So when I walked in and I seen, without being disrespectful, but I just seen people that weren't jacked like Nsima, right? I seen regular looking people, older people, again, no disrespect, but overweight people. And I'm like, wow, this actually
average
looks
Americans. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
It's true. It's true. 100%.
So again, and I seen people having a good time. So I was like, wow, okay, maybe if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And then, again, picking up any photography job and that sort of thing. So I started going to other MMA fights, and then that kind of pushed me away again. Cause I'm like, oh wait, these guys are different, which obviously you and I know is yeah, dude, that's not your traditional jiu-jitsu experience. So again, a couple of exposures, but again, moving forward a little bit, no, I hadn't really ever experienced any grappling, any school, any class setting of any kind. It was just all right, today's the day, here I go.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you first step on that mat and have that first experience too. I talk about this with a lot of people, especially people that come from a physical background, whether it's sports, weightlifting, or something like that. When you go through that first class, luckily everyone that I've talked to on this podcast obviously stuck with jiu-jitsu. But there's definitely a good majority of people that go through that first class, and probably men that are either overly confident or underconfident in themselves, and they take it as, I don't ever want to go through that again. That is just way too much for me. Was there ever a moment of that when you first started where you're like, I don't really know if this is going to be for me?
Thankfully, no. And so that's for 2 reasons. The easy one is the obviously I didn't have any confidence, but I have been around the most elite athletes that you can imagine for many years now because of the podcast, because of Super Training Gym, right? If WWE's in town, all those wrestlers are coming to train. If there's a strength coach, he might bring in one of the athletes, going to the 49ers facility and not hanging out. That's maybe a little bit too liberal there, but being in the same room as Fred Warner and then watching him rip out 315 like it was nothing, and then him coming up and racking it and then coming up and saying what's up and then taking a picture. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. if you tap me and it's your day one, I'm gonna give you a high five and be like, holy, like, dude, that was sick. Uh, again, that's just because, like, what am I gonna prove to you on a Monday morning before everybody has to go to work? Like, it's not really that big of a deal for me. So when I walked in and I started getting wrecked by everybody, which happens to this day,
Yeah.
2 years later, it didn't bother me at all. And, I would say that the only time where I was like, oh, shoot, maybe it wasn't that it wasn't for me. I was like getting ready for a competition, and I started getting like a lot of weird anxiety because I had just competed, and I kind of got wrecked. Like, I didn't score any points, and I lost by a total of like 2 points total, like, for between two different matches. One was basically 0-0, and I got a negative or something like that. And then the other one, I lost via one takedown, and like I couldn't get out of it. And so, a lot of people's, excuse me, a lot of people's advice was like, "Oh, dude, you just got to get right back in there." So I'm like, shoot, okay, well, let's do this. And so I signed up for the very next one, which was like 2 months later. And as I'm training and under somebody, I would start getting really anxious and I started panicking. So I went through this weird phase where I would just disassociate. Like, let's say me and you are rolling. All I could think about was, damn, who's going to call me out next? And I would just be like, whew,
Mm.
hey, man, here's my arm. Please tap me right now because dude, I want to stop, And so, like, I took a little break from that, and then, kind of pulled out of the competition and was just like, I just need to make jujitsu fun again. I got advice from other people that kind of experienced similar things. And they were like, yeah, dude, just push all the competitions back. Don't worry about it. Just go in there and have fun. And then a year later, I competed again and had a freaking blast. And then I shortly after got promoted. So that was the only time where I was like, man, like, I was having such a good time. I was feeling confident. I had like a really like good gas tank on the mats. And then all of a sudden, like, I start panicking. I can't breathe. I'm like, this is weird. But then you get through it.
What do you think was causing that? Because that's very common with everyone. I started this podcast because I wanted to, as a white belt, I wanted to document my journey through jujitsu and the trials and tribulations everyone goes through. Every jujitsu podcast when I started this was a high level black belt, world champ, freaking lineage out the wazoo, talking about jujitsu with other like minded people. And I started interviewing other white belts in my early days that were my friends and just trying to figure out if, like, hey, is this everyone's going through? And that's something very common. People who start going through these situations where they're tapping early, they're giving things up, they're kind of like giving up
Mhm.
mid roll. And it's a very common thing. What do you think caused that in you, and how'd you overcome it?
Dude, so I wish I could really pinpoint it down to what it was. I just know that I had put a lot of pressure on myself for the competition prior because I was like, had everybody telling me like, "Hey, dude, just go out there, have fun. Like, you're still at white belt. Like, it literally, like, none of this
Means
matters."
nothing.
Which I understand now, but so I basically had a lot of people telling me what I interpreted that as is, "Hey, it's no big deal. Therefore, your training, no big deal. Like, just go out there, have fun. Hey, just go out there and have fun at training. Hey, like, kind of like half-ass everything because the competition's not really worth that much." And so I was like, no, like, I need to take this serious. Like F that. Like, so I got a little frustrated, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go out there and win a gold medal. Like, that's all I'm gonna do. Like, it's either that or bust. So, like, my training, all that stuff was like amped up. So I went from, like, starting like the first year, like 2-3 days a week to, all right, now I'm gonna compete. So I competed, like, I think like 8 months in. So I went from like 2-3 days to 4, 5, and even 6 days a week.
Wow.
So you can imagine the fatigue and everything. So every time I trained an extra day, I got hurt. So I hired a wrestling coach to help me with takedowns. Got the worst stinger I could ever imagine. I was in so much pain. Again, I have no idea what I was doing at the time. I barely know what I'm doing, but I went, shot in for a single leg, and my head just went straight into a dude's thigh,
Ooh.
and I was just like, and I'm like, oh, I can't move. A week later, I take a very light bump and I fall on the ground. My back seizes up, and like all of a sudden, I can't move because my back pain is back. And I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like, why does this keep happening? So I'm freaking out. Obviously, with that mentality and that overuse of my body, I went in and, like I said, I didn't score a freaking point. So I had a similar mentality prepping for the very next one. And I put so much pressure on myself because I'm like, no, I got to win. I have all these people around me. They know me from the podcast. They know me from lifting. They know me from all these things. I need to go out there and win. And so once I started training, like everything was like death gripping everything. Like, oh, I need to get this passed right now because I got to get these points. And my buddy, Chris Robertson, who's kind of, helped me along the entire way, was like, bro, calm down. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you're so tense right now. I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, okay. And I try to calm down. And then, you go roll with somebody else that, isn't quite that close to you. So they're trying to get their training in. So they're going hard. And next thing I know, I'm under somebody and I'm tapping to just anxiety. Like, I'm like, hey, dude, I don't feel good right now. I need to take a break here. And then, like I said, what would happen is I wouldn't even care about the person I was rolling with. So like if me and you were rolling, I would just literally be thinking about, fuck, dude, who's going to walk through that door? Like, I hope it's not somebody that's like has a chip on their shoulder that wants to beat me up or whatever it was, like making up these fake scenarios. Because if I stopped and thought about it, there's literally nobody out there that wants to do that to me. But in my head, I'm like, oh man, oh my gosh, what if, professor walks in and he like, had a bad day or something and he like makes us all just do live rounds or something, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Instead of like, hey, how about we get a frame in right now? Like the very basic things of the here and now. All I did was think about anything other than the roll because I needed to disassociate. I wanted nothing to do with being in that position. And I can't think of his name right now. A French dude actually kind of coached me up on it. And he's like, yeah, you're disengaging. So what he had me do was jump on an assault bike and go at a pace that is annoying. Not annoying because it's too fast. It's annoying because all you want to do is break the speed because it's like a slow pace, but not a cruising pace. A pace that's just hard enough to be like, shoot, like, dang, this is kind of hard, but like you want to just like stand up and go just so that way you can catch a little breather. And he's like, that's the exact same feeling that you're trying to avoid when you're under somebody. He's like, so what we're going to do now is we're going to control your breath and you need to keep it was RPMs. I forgot what the RPMs were exactly. So it was around, I'm going to mess up the wattages, but basically, again, a pace that you could maintain for 10 minutes without completely dying. So he's like, you're going to maintain that. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just kind of catch your breath, like let your breath go, but also let your mind go and try not to worry about anything. And it was crazy because he would be like, come back to your breath as it got hard. And I'm like he would call it out before I even realized what was happening. And what was funny is like, if I can calm myself down, hitting those RPMs was super easy. Then he was like, all right, let's think about you in the bullpen. And all of a sudden, it would be really hard to maintain those RPMs because my heart would be racing and I would be having a hard time catching my breath. So the practice was get into the flow state to where you can maintain it, then have that micro exposure of what stresses you out. Okay, being stuck under somebody like as their gi is like covering my face or something, right? Okay, can I calm down? Can I catch okay, cool, I can catch my breath. All right, all 330 competitors to the bullpen, that feeling you get when you're like trying to warm up and all of a sudden you get that cold chill of like, oh, they're calling my group. Calm down, calm down. That horrible awkwardness of being in the bullpen as you're standing next to the guy that's going to try to kill you, trying to be stone-faced and be calm. Okay, calm down, calm down. All right, they call you out. You walk to the mat and now the ref is looking at you and they're like, all right, come here. Find that breath, calm down. So doing that practice, like, dude, it was such a game changer for me going into that competition. So our group got delayed by over an hour. And I was still able to like kind of catch my breath and stay calm. And I did pretty good. Won two matches by submission. I screwed up and gave my arm up on accident this time and got arm barred, but I ended up taking home bronze that day, and it felt great. It was really good. And so since then, what I do to kind of prevent that feeling is like, one, be in the moment, like, hey, be here and now. And then also, like, just think about something that makes me happy. Like, that usually will snap me out of it. But if I can't, an automatic thing that I do during every roll is I smile. I literally will be in a bad position, just smiling my face off,
Forcing it.
just like making that facial expression has been such a game changer. So if anybody listening, if you feel that way, just give it a shot. Just smile. I have been so hard on my body for so many years. Physically, yes, but more mentally. Again, kind of saying like, I wish I could do this, but I can't because of my back. Like, I wish I was bigger and stronger like everybody else, but I can't. I would beat myself up, kind of verbally and emotionally. But now I'm like so grateful for this body. So when I'm on the mats and I'm like, I cannot believe I am fighting another dude right now. Like, holy shit, dude, look how far you've come. And I just start
Yeah.
smiling. And next thing you know, I get a sweep and I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then I get swept. So, no big deal. But I'm just
Real
so
life right
great.
there.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm just so grateful that I get to touch the mats and be in a position where, like it's a kind of a crappy feeling and a crappy problem to have. But what's the what's the opposite of that? Not having the situation where you're having to deal with some anxiety as you're grappling another man. Like, that's pretty freaking cool. Like, I can't really think of anything like to compare it to, but it's a good problem to have. If you're putting yourself in that position, how much better are you for it in the end, right? A lot better than a lot of the population.
Yeah, absolutely. I always talk about like blue belt blues, which is kind of like what you went through as a white belt, but it's like the unrealistic expectations we put on ourselves, right? And it's such a hard thing to let go when you get in there. And I always hate telling people, "Oh, just keep showing up, just keep showing up." But a lot of times if you do keep showing up, you learn to work through it. Right?
Mhm,
You start talking to people, and you're very fortunate to have such incredible people around you with such a wealth of knowledge and experience that they can really, hopefully, even if you hear the same message from multiple people, sometimes it hits differently depending
mhm,
on who's saying it, right? So I think that's super, super important too. Of like, if you guys are going through a difficult time in your journey, dude, everyone does it at every belt level, every level of experience. Like, don't worry about it. Talk to someone. Try to figure out something. Maybe shift your goals or try to figure out like what's the root cause of this? Is like, why am I putting this pressure on me? I just did an Instagram post where I got recently promoted to purple belt. And like I was talking about how purple belt feels freeing, right? Like I don't have any expectations of myself. Like now it's me get to experiment. And I don't know why I felt that way as a blue belt. I don't know why maybe it was like the time spent at blue belt. I was almost a blue belt for 5 years. And it's like maybe it was that, maybe it was like seeing my friends get promoted and I didn't, and I'm like, "Man, what am I doing wrong?" You know what I mean? Like there was like a lot of like psychological things behind that feeling. And it was nothing against not being promoted or my friends being promoted or anything like that. It was more of like an internal reflection of like, what am I doing? Like, how come am I gonna be a blue belt forever? I don't want to be a blue belt forever. Like, but like when I got promoted to purple, it was like I legitimized myself. Like, all right, I know jujitsu. Like I know what I'm doing. Now have like there's zero reason for me not to just completely go all in on experimenting, having fun, looking at training differently. I felt like I was like every time I rolled with someone as like such a like a long time blue belt, like I was like, I need to prove to them like or prove to myself that it's not me. Like it's just
mhm,
timing. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like all these things going through my mind. And then I was like, now looking back at it, I was like, what was I doing, man? Like showing up, I get to go train. I don't have to. I get to. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And that mind
mhm,
shift, that mind shift, like really helped me a lot. I looking at being fortunate enough to be able to do this instead of like, what do I have to do to get that promotion? What do I have to do to win that competition? What do I have to do to make it to training tonight? Is like you can, because when you start feeling like it's an obligation, then you really can start going down this rabbit hole of like, I'm not succeeding. I'm not doing good. And like to your story, you start losing sight of how far you've come. Bro, you were like your body was battered and beaten before you even got on the mats. And now look where you are. You want to, you got medal to competition. You're a blue belt. You've done all these great things. So it's really easy for us to put the horse blinders on and completely forget about where we're coming from, because all we're focused on is like, what is the next goal? Like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's a journey, bro. Like there's going to be more. There's more to that. There's other roads that can lead to what your goal is.
Yeah, I forgot about that really quick in my early stages. Once I really was like, okay, yeah, this is actually a sport that I love. I think again, looking at like my life and stuff, like I grew up loving basketball. What was again, just like all the sports, like I was good young, and then eventually like, whoa, this guy's like 6'5" and he's only, like 14 years old. Like this is crazy. Like, I quickly realized like, because I can dribble without looking at the ball doesn't mean that I'm actually any good, like in the grand scheme of things. But with jiu-jitsu, I'm like, well, like, I'm about 6 feet tall. I got really strong legs. I've been lifting for a long time. So like I got good strength for jujitsu. Like, man, like I actually might be pretty good at this. And then so like everybody's like, hey dude, like just take it slow in the beginning. Like, yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm gonna go slow. Yeah, dude, I don't want to burn out. Like, let's go slow. It's
Bit
like
by the bug.
2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Like, no, I'm still going slow. I feel great. I'm going slow. Like this is real slow.
Lying
And
to
then
yourself every time you step on the mat.
boom, like, you hit that wall. And I had that, that very common rib thing where you're like, I don't know, I think I either broke a rib or popped a lung or broke my spine. Like, I don't know what it is, but I'm figuring it out. Like, I can't quite breathe, but we're good. So I had that thing hit me pretty quick, and I'm like, man, maybe I wasn't going as slow as I thought. But you get excited, and like I said, you hit your first sweep, or you get your first submission, or you barely miss your first submission. You're like, oh, I got to get that, and you just, it's such an amazing sport. I'm so glad that it found me and it all worked out.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point of like celebrating small victories in your journey too could really help this a lot. What do you feel like was your first victory outside of winning a competition? Like you're like, holy crap, that just happened. For me, it was like surviving a round with a higher belt without being submitted. You know what I mean? Or not tapping to pressure, or being able to escape a knee on belly, stuff like that. What was like one of those first moments in your jujitsu journey where you're like, that was a victory for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So mine wasn't even like a like really even a thing where like like, oh yeah, you got through the finish line, like good for you. No, it was just the fact that like I touched the competition mats, right? Like when like I'm lined up for my first competition, I just start laughing. I almost started crying because I was just thinking about like dude, at that point, like 8 months or a little bit further than that, it's like, dude, like 10 months ago, you couldn't even really like stand or sit without being in a lot of pain. And look at you now. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, dude, gotta focus. Like this dude's about to try to kill me. When I first started jujitsu, I told literally nobody knew about my back pain. Right. So I started jujitsu and I made sure that nobody knew that I had a history of back pain. I didn't want back pain to exist once I walked through the doors at Waza Brazilian Jiu Jitsu here in Elk Grove, California. Nobody knew about my back pain. My back pain didn't exist. And I went in there and I trained. And every day I left, I was like, I'm a new person. Right. That was the biggest win of my life, because I had been held back for so long because of this freaking back pain. And here I was rolling on the ground, getting inverted even, and, getting, dudes in positions to where like they couldn't kill me, like that was freaking cool. So that's definitely the number one thing for me, is like just getting out of my shell and, you know, again, doing something that I thought I would never do. Right? I had doctors tell me that I'd never exercise again because of how bad my back pain was, or
Crazy.
my after the X-rays and stuff, and which at the time sounded pretty crazy when they're like, "Oh yeah, you'll never be able to exercise again." But now I'm like, well, doctors don't really know shit sometimes. Sorry, okay, yeah, all the disrespect. I was going to say no disrespect, but well, the thing is, like, so a buddy of mine, he just competed at Fight to Win, and his knee popped during the event. And I was like, hey, dude, like, just so you know, when you go get that MRI, they're going to be like, you're so screwed. I'm like, but the thing is, they don't have a picture of your MRI before it started hurting. So they only have that to compare to like a brand new knee that has never done jujitsu for the last decade plus. Like, so don't worry about anything that they have to say. And so with like my back pain, it's like, really? Like, dude, they were getting ready to schedule me for surgery. I am not joking. Literally the first day I went to go get x-rayed on my back, they're like, yeah, we should probably get you in to figure out how we can, get in there and start surgery. And I'm like, no, you won't. So again, going back to your original question, it was this person who I was somebody that I considered myself to be, quote, broken. Now that broken person was strong enough to go roll and do a thing that, again, we can talk about like the percentages or whatever, but whatever that very low percentage of people that are willing to walk in and train jujitsu, like I was now one of those people. Like again, biggest win ever for me.
No, that's incredible, man. It's definitely a victory that everyone should celebrate if that is a part of their story and not frown upon it. You know what I mean? But you're being so fresh in your journey still, just maybe what, 2 years in, a little over 2 years.
Yeah. So again, it'll be 2 years this November.
Yeah. So since it's still fresh, what do you feel that are the biggest problems in jiu-jitsu as a new person coming into the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot there. I'll start with the very obvious one because I see it every day. It's the white belt that walks in that thinks he's going to impress anybody. It's like this isn't the time nor place for it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people that will treat the training grounds as the proving grounds. So they'll walk in thinking that they're going to just kill everybody and then take selfies together at the end of class, which is kind of funny because you're like, hey, you were just literally trying to kill each other. But so what I'm getting at is they will come in thinking that, all right, I have something to prove to these guys that, although some might have some accolades behind them, but majority of people are just going to end up going to work after this class. So what they'll do is they will go balls to the wall 100% until they get hurt, and then they recover and they come back and do it again. So again, I like to think as competitions as the proving grounds. Like if there's somewhere that you want to go all out and really test yourself, that's where you're going to do it. I'm not going to do that with my buddies, although sometimes we, quote, turn things up and we kind of go at it. But we never ever walk in thinking like, today's the day I'm going to beat the shit out of so-and-so or whatever, like as we're like walking in, right? I see the school and classes as like the training grounds. Like this is where I'm going to practice. This is where I want to get good. This is the place where I want to walk in feeling good. And I want to walk out feeling just as good, a lot more tired and a little beat up, but I don't want to walk out of there like, shoot, I did too much and now my knee hurts again and I probably won't be able to do the rest of my responsibilities to the, highest potential. So I see that. That's more of a mental thing. But the here and now thing, the actionable thing is I see a lot of people, they, bump hands and then they're sorry for blowing out any speakers. They come in, they death grip, and they're just breathing through their mouth, and they're so tense, and they're so fired up, and their face is just like they're going crazy, like if their life is on the line.
Yeah,
and I'm like, bro, we're flowing right now.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of white belts that want to again prove something, but they also want to do something. Right? You don't know what you're doing. What are you going to do? And that's coming from somebody who is still trying to figure things out. But one of the just absolute freaking goldest gems that I've ever received. Is there such thing as a golden gem? But pieces, gold nuggets, whatever you want to call them. The best piece of advice that I've ever received as a white belt came from Cassio Wernick. He was like, "Don't fight back." And I'm like, "The fuck?" Like, bro, this is jiu-jitsu. I thought you were supposed to. And he's like, "What are you going to do to a black belt? Are you really going to get out of that armbar? Are you really going to be able to prevent him from sweeping you? Like, sure, put up some resistance, but that doesn't mean go like all spazzy and try to like do a backflip or." He's like, "No, when you get caught in something, ask questions, learn, go through the motions. Be like, hey, can you, as you get your arm, like, hey, stop. Like, what did I do to get here? Or how do I prevent this or whatever it is?" But he's like, "Don't fight back." And I'm like, all right. And so sure enough, you actually make a lot more training partners when you're not spazzing the heck out and you're actually working and training and trying to get better. So yeah, those three things I see right away. Again, the ego kind of getting into it, the crazy spazzy breath work, like not staying calm throughout the workout. And then also again, like, dude, like you're a white belt, like you don't know what you don't know. So quit trying all these random things. Sit down, chill, calm your face down, and start asking some questions. Right?
Yeah.
Those would be the main things right now that I could think off the top of my head.
Yeah, and you once again, like you do the DMs podcast with Mason Fowler and what's his name?
Deron Wynn, yeah.
Deron Wynn. And Deron, he's still in the UFC, isn't he?
Yeah, so he's not right now in the UFC, but there is a possibility that he'll come back to bare knuckle MMA.
Okay. Yeah, which both of them, Mason is high level black belt, traveling, does all seminars. Both of them just a wealth of knowledge. How do you utilize them to where if you have a question, you just go straight to them and you're like, "Hey, I'm encountering this. What can I do here? My mindset here, blah blah blah." Like, how do you use them to like better yourself without it coming off as like I'm trying to take advantage of this relationship?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I was a little bit more like kind of like selective with my questioning, especially like on air for sure early on, but they both quickly reassured me. They were like, "Bro, there's more people that are at your level than there are at our level. So there's no such thing as a dumb question." And then I forgot who it was, but Duran was giving the example of one of the best wrestlers. I'm sorry, I don't know the names of all the wrestlers, especially when he was on the men's U.S. national team. But he was like, man, he would ask the dumbest questions, the most basic questions, and we're like, dude, is this guy like brown nosing? Like, why does he keep asking these like super basic things? But then come to find out, it's because he's getting like a tiny little bit more information on the basics every single time he asks these questions. And then every time he asks a question, he gets a little bit better, small percentage better on whatever it was, whatever the technique was. He's like, then we're like, shoot, he's now better than us. Like, this is crazy, all because he's asking these very simple questions. So this was a Jason Khalipa thing, white belt mentality. Yeah, dude, asking as I don't want to say as many dumb questions as possible, but like there's almost no dumb question that you can ask. So when I'm asking them a question that I have, I'm kind of asking for the viewers that are at my level as well. So I've kind of taken a step back and been like, yeah, you know what? This does feel a little selfish, right? Because I can ask a very like, hey, do what happens when I go for an underhook and they go for an overhook and now I'm stuck. And, they would answer it very like easily. And I'm like, yeah, there's probably a good chance that a lot of people have dealt with that situation where they're trying to go for like a knee cut and like, oh, let me get this underhook. And oh, shoot, now my elbows feel like it's going to break because they got this tight overhook and now I'm screwed, right? How many people have been stuck in that position? Endless amounts of people, right? So it's silly of me to think that my questions are too elementary for these guys because the chances are there's a lot more people that have these elementary questions versus a high level question, right? Like I I can't ask a question that a purple belt has. right? So I'm not even going to try because I'm not at that level. You are, right? But for me, again, barely got my blue belt recently, so I'm at a level that like a majority of us are. So that gave me a lot of confidence in just kind of like speaking my mind and being more open and like willing to ask some of those simpler questions.
Yeah. So what do you guys like cover on your podcast with like a variety, like, because Deron Wynn is high ranking wrestler, like national champ, like lots of accolades to him. Mason, obviously, former MMA fighter, black belt, world champ, stuff like that. And then you, blue belt podcaster.
Mhm.
Like, what is the dynamic like, and how do you guys? Was there any like, I wouldn't say awkwardness, but like, how was the growing period of you three being together to like finding that niche of where you guys can provide the most value?
Yeah, no, we're still in that growing process, man. Like, I mean, just like you, like you're still growing as well, but like we are like in our infancy. So we're still figuring out the whole dynamic, but the chemistry is building fast. So we text on a regular basis, although Mason right now is in New Zealand. So like the timing's a little bit off. Like I'll shoot him a text and then like he doesn't get back till the next day. And so we're kind of like back and forth like that. But the great thing is those two guys are literally brothers. Like they talk crap to each other. They talk about how they want to fight each other all the time. Like they've been brothers for a long time. So it's really easy for me to like just kind of like throw alley oops and then they dunk it every single time. So to answer the first part of the question, so we mainly, because me and Mason are on the jiu-jitsu side, so we mainly talk about jiu-jitsu. So like CJI happened, we had Victor Hugo on, and we dove deep into that. So we talk a lot about jiu-jitsu and like upcoming events and then like what's going on with Mason and what's going on with me even and stuff like that. So very jiu-jitsu heavy. We have a blast. It's kind of like this, how we're just kind of chatting, and we do have like somewhat of a like, hey, let's get to this topic today, but it's not very like the 5 things you need in order to get a better scissor sweep or whatever. Although I can imagine that's going to happen down the road, but as of right now, we're just kind of hanging out with Duran. I mean, he was the number 1 wrestler coming out of high school. Again, he was on the U.S. men's national team. Fought in Bellator, fought in the UFC. Just again, another crazy wealth of knowledge. He's currently a coach right now. So anything you want to know about wrestling, especially like at the youth level right now where he's coaching, he's got all the answers for. So we cover a lot of wrestling where not that many people are going to cover something like that. Like the episode I'm putting out next week, we talk about a fight to win event that was all high school wrestlers. And I'm like, dude, how does that even happen? And so we dive deep into like, all right, what does an athlete, a coach, or a parent, like what should they be focused on when it comes to trying to get their high school athlete to the collegiate level? And it's a very sensitive subject, because like Duran's like, hey, I've seen it go both ways where like you have the young kid that's like crazy winning state championships with the crazy parents and they go all the way and they wrestle, at state as well. Then I've had the same thing where they all go crazy and by the time the kid's 14, he wants nothing to do with it. And then I've seen the opposite where nobody cares and all of a sudden he starts wrestling in high school and then he goes on. So he's like, there's no one way. You just really need to think about like what the kids, like what's in the best interest for the kid. Not what's in your interest, not what's going to make the most money or whatever it is. Just raise a good kid and make sure he's happy. So we cover a good amount of things. Sometimes we get a little political too. Lots of banter and like kind of trash talking here and there and that sort of thing. So it's so much fun though. I have a blast on Mark Bell's Power Project, learn a ton. I also started that podcast from 0 subscribers, 0 downloads, 0 views. But, again, I had Mark Bell there, so it's pretty easy for me to kind of lob, alley-oops to him as well. Over here, starting from ground zero again, I'm relearning all the stuff that I did, over 6 years ago. And I'm like, oh, wait, but this time we're going to go this route because I know how to do things this time. So it's been a lot of fun. And it's cool because I'll walk into to jiu-jitsu and somebody will be quoting something from the DM's podcast. And I'm like, whoa, it's getting out there in the real world. This is cool. So people are appreciating it and they're accepting it with open arms. So it's I foresee that as being a really, really big podcast soon. It's just gonna, it's just gonna take some time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that people talking about it when you go to jiu-jitsu, because I've rolled with people not knowing that they listen to my podcast, and afterwards like, "Hey man, by the way, I love the podcast." I'm like,
That's cool,
I was like,
man.
"That's cool, man. I appreciate that." But in my mind, I was like, "I'm so glad I didn't be a dickhead during this role, because that could have been really bad."
Yeah.
Could you imagine the online hate? Travis is actually not nice in real life. This guy is super duper fake. The internet nowadays, man, is going to be ruthless. I was like, but no, it's super cool hearing people, people messaging me on Instagram and saying, "Hey, man, I love your stuff," emailing me, joining my communities. Anytime anyone dedicates any amount of time to the podcast, whether it's a review, shooting me a DM, joining my community, my Discord, my Facebook page, or a Facebook group. If you guys want to join those, links gonna be down below. The Facebook group is much larger than the Discord. Discord's hard, man. Like, it's hard to get people active on a Discord,
Mhm.
but it's growing as well. But that's one thing that I absolutely love about jiu-jitsu is like the community aspect, and like you talked about, like how you can go to people with problems, and you're like, "Oh man, like how do I do this?" or what's going on here? Or even something simple like I love flashy geese. Like I love like Control Industries. They always got some nice ones. Hyperfly. Like
Mhm.
I have like my wife hates me with my gi addiction, bro. She's like,
How
she'll
many do
see a
you have?
bag come in. I probably have like 8, 9 geese right now.
Okay,
Like,
that's not even that bad.
it's not that bad, but I mean, when they're like $150, $200 each, like it adds up pretty quick.
Yeah.
And to her, when she just sees a gi come in, she's like, "Another one?" I'm like, "All right, DJ Khaled, relax."
You're
I'm like,
but
look, like I
babe,
use my podcast money to buy
yeah,
these. I see one, and
yeah,
I'm like, "Oh, I have the podcast money. I can do that."
there you
But
go.
like, even like someone the other day was like, "Hey, Travis, where do you get your geese from?" And I was like, "Oh, well, this one is X, Y, and Z." Like, and they're like, "I kind of want to buy one of those." Like,
Mhm.
I think geese are kind of like one of those things people don't really talk about, but it can be kind of like tribal. Like, like they're like, "I love this one. This one is mine. There are many like it, but this one belongs to me." Like, how do you find like a good gi? And like, do you go to Mason and like other people and are like, "Hey man, what do you guys think about these brands?"
Yeah, so initially, that's so funny, dude. So a lot of my stuff. So real quick about the community. So that was something I was just completely thrown off by. Again, so I started jujitsu. I think I was 37. Yeah, I had to have been 37, and I, I keep to myself. I have a super tiny circle, and some of that's just like literally just family. So the thought of being in my late 30s making new friends, right, is like kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. But I'm not joking when I now have like best friends, right? Like I text these dudes on a daily basis. You probably have this too, where you have your buddies all in the thread and you're all talking crap, like again, I'm not the person that's like, "Hey, bro, like you guys want to get the family together and go on the boat this weekend or something, whatever it is." I'm like, no, it's like, I don't like people like that. I've been on camping trips, I've been on boat trips, barbecues, like birthday parties, like all these things and I'm like, dude, it's only been 2 years. And it's like, it literally like making my whole world better, not just like confidence, not just my like physique, not the minor surface things. I'm talking like my wife has friends now because of jujitsu, and she doesn't do jujitsu, but the wives of my friends, they all keep in touch now. So yeah, the community is amazing. As far as gis, because of that community, I started getting like a couple of hand-me-downs because they're like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna need one, and you're gonna need like your Tuesday throwaway gi when we're just doing open mat, and then your Wednesday gi you're gonna want."
Lucky.
So I got some pretty crappy hand-me-downs, but I'm grateful for them because like they had like holes in them and mismatching pants versus the top, and so when I finally did go to like start like, okay, let's start purchasing stuff. Nsima was huge with Origin. Like he's like, "Bro,
Hmm.
these are the best by far." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Let me check these out."
That
And
buckle is incredible.
yeah, no, the buckle's cool. The first one I got was like their super cheap one, which like doesn't have like any weave at all. and it was like super slick. And I was like, oh, this is a nice lightweight one. Like, this is cool. Like, I really liked it. And, I get comments all the time like, dude, you're so slippery when you wear that one or whatever. There's so many.
You greasing? You greasing with it?
And then when another dude's like, bro, you're so slippery. And I'm like, yeah, hopefully it doesn't piss anybody off. But like, yeah, jiu-jitsu can be so gay sometimes, and you don't realize it because you're just like in someone's guard, and then, or like you have them in your guard and your legs are wide open. And then all of a sudden, you get your legs in butterfly, whatever it is.
Embrace the awkwardness, bro.
Yeah, you really do got to embrace that awkwardness. So I liked Origin gis early on, and then I moved up to their Pearl Weave, which is a really great gi, super lightweight, it's very freaking durable, and again, I really like that Pearl Weave. I got a gift from my buddies because one of my buddies, Chris Robertson, he competed at Worlds last year at brown belt. And I helped him every step of the way with his diet. We got him down from like 205 to like 168 or something crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. He was so he was the first person that I ever worked with where I was like, hey, do XYZ. Hey, bro, I did XYZ. I'm like, oh shit, he actually did it. I had to lean on a couple of different people because I had never helped anybody to that extent. So like I reached out to Stan Efferding, of course, Mark Bell. I reached out to all my resources to help make sure that he made weight. And shout out to him. He ended up winning Worlds at brown belt. So really, really cool accomplishment. While they were there, him and one of my other buddies and their whole families, they bought me a Shoya roll, the Shoya roll IBJJF collab. Sick gi.
Talk about money.
Dude, so dope. It weighs less than this shirt. Like, so freaking nice. So upset. But so I ended up getting, my Waza patch on the back. And it's sick because that's the name of my school. But that gi is called a Waza Air. So
that's
it's
cool.
Perfect. I got a patch that they made for me of my mom's born and death date on my gi. So like this gi is very important to me, right? It was a huge gift. Got my mom's thing on there. And it was funny. So my buddies were like, hey, you coming in to train on Wednesday? I'm like, yeah, I'm going. Of course. Why wouldn't I? My wife, oh, just checking. Are you going to be training Wednesday? Like, yeah, I'm training Wednesday. And then my professor, hey, bro, like, I just want to get a picture with you and a couple of other guys that competed with your medals. So are you training Wednesday? I'm like, yeah, I'm training Wednesday. All these texts coming in at the same time. People asking me if I'm going to train on Wednesday. So I was like, all right, this is probably happening. So I'm like, let me wear my dope gi. And sure enough, it's the day I got promoted. And I'm saying all this because I'm wearing my favorite gi, right? Super lightweight, super dope comp gi. We're doing a very basic drill where my partner has my lapel or collar here as I go into kind of like a lasso to push him off to get away from like a headquarters position and then re-guard or whatever. Barely tapped him, and all of a sudden, my whole freaking shoulder ripped off. The gi shredded. I was so upset for so many reasons because obviously this gi meant so much to me. Didn't want to wear it for training, but I was like, hey, let me take, so that way I take some cool pictures and stuff. And it freaking melted, dude. Like the whole collar down to the shoulder is just all ripped and like barely even, like, no joke. We're light drilling. I was hurt from the competition. So like I couldn't even do anything anyways. I reached out to Shoya Roll and it was like a very like not good experience. So I was pretty bummed about that. Yeah. They were like, oh, we need the receipt. I'm like, dude, this was like, we got this at Worlds, and they're like, no, but we need a receipt. I'm like, one doesn't exist. Like, well, if you can send us the receipt. And I'm like, whatever, man. So I'm just gonna retire that gi and just kind of like, I don't know, maybe like frame it or something with my white belt and go way over the top as a blue belt does and commemorate this hard year and a half of working on mats or whatever, So that was my favorite gi. So then, went back to the Pearl Weave Origin gi, but then out of nowhere, a Sacramento-based company called Functional Technique arises out of my own freaking jiu-jitsu school, and so every once in a while there is like a disruptor in a, certain community of products or whatever you want to call it. They're a disruptor. So the gi top is a little bit heavier than that pearl weave, but it has very similar like kind of like design to it. But it's so nice, dude. It's like tapered. But the thing about the pants though is like unreal. So it's hard to explain it, especially because it's just like all verbally. But the pants have a buckle very similar to Origin, but the buckle is a lot bigger. So it's like not very dainty, but it doesn't get in the way of your rolling. It's crazy. They have this really, really unique design where like I know what this sounds like, but I promise you it's freaking dope. So if you pull the belt out, you undo some Velcro, and now you have a pocket on the outside of your pants. It's not like the pocket itself isn't like visible, but the in, like to put your phone in is, so you can put the belt back on, and now you have regular dope looking pants because they're tapered. They're not like, they're not like pants like regular gi pants that kind of like, if you're wearing them, people are like, oh, you do karate, like they're not like flared out. Like they look sick. They're super dope. So there's that. For bigger dudes with bigger legs, they actually have some stretch to them. So they are very comfortable. And then check this out. So like the knees, they have like, I can only describe them as like maybe pleats or plates. I don't know. But like they have like things that go across. So when you like squat down, they actually have a little extra give.
Oh, wow.
So you don't feel that like that pulling on your knee, right? It's incredible. And then, of course, like I said, they're tapered, so they look really, really good. Wouldn't be IBJJF legal for a couple different reasons, but I compete in Jiu-Jitsu World League, no issue there at all. And they look incredible, super durable. And again, they're out of my hometown, so like definitely give them props. But that has become my absolute favorite gi. And the more people that try it, they're like, dude, like this sucks. I have so many other gis, but yet I can't wear those because this one feels so much better. So again, super again, it's in the name, functional technique. It's they look good, but again, like it's function over fashion. However, they just happen to be looking good too. And they're priced extremely well. I want to say it's only like $200 for like the best gi you're ever going to have. And just to give them a shout out, it's at functionaltechnique.com if anybody's interested. But really though, like any gi's gonna work, but when you put on that good gi, right? Everybody has their gi. All right. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
If you know your buddies are gonna show up Friday morning for open mat, like all right, it's time. Let me put on my functional technique because I gotta look and feel good. So that way,
look good, roll good, baby.
Yeah, when I tap these fools, I can just get up like, yeah, like feeling good. Because I like to film my stuff too. I don't really post too much about it just because, like, I don't know, I think that's kind of a dick move if you tap somebody and then you're celebrating online.
Yeah.
But I like to reference my stuff. And so when I have a good looking gi, I just happen to watch that video a little bit more. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you end up getting promoted that day that your gi shredded?
Yeah, dude.
Back to that real quick. How was that?
So that was, okay, I was still a little bit thrown off, but I could tell like, okay, everybody's asking me about Wednesday morning. Like, what do you guys want? Like, okay, yeah, I'm going. And then my buddy Chris looks over and he's like, oh, that's weird. Mrs. Zaragoza is here. And I didn't really understand. Like, what? I thought he was like talking trash because I was taking like a round off. And I'm like,
yeah, real quick. I'm going to use that one. That's a good one.
So I had just completed 2 days, or not 2 days, whatever, Saturday to Wednesday. And my foot was this, like, I had like elephantitis in my foot. It was so swollen. It was bad. I could barely walk. And I'm like, bro, like, I'm here. Like, what the heck? Like, talking crap, like, that sucks. And I'm like, what did he say? And I was just like, whatever. And then I stood up and all of a sudden I see my wife and my son in the corner. I'm like, oh, you guys are here. And I'm like, oh, they're here. Like, this is happening. Like, all right, cool. And, most belt promotions, they happen at the end of class. But my buddies that I've been kind of bragging about, they had to, they had to leave. They once open mat was over, they have, work and stuff, so they had to bounce. So my professor Sean was like, all right, normally we do this at the end of class, but because of scheduling, we're going to do it first. And so he called me and my buddy Derek up, and he's like, hey, I just want to, give these guys a shout out. They just competed. My buddy Derek, he's a I don't know if it's super heavy or heavyweight, but he's a big dude, but he's not your typical super heavyweight like in SEMA. Like, okay, he's at that weight class because he's jacked and he's a big dude, not because he has a lot of body fat. So he just blows through everybody, 100% submission rate. Obviously got the gold. And so, he's bragging about him, and then he's, bragging about me. And then he's like, because they've been so consistent, he's giving a little speech there. He's like, they both earned their blue belt today. And so I was like, oh, dude, like, this is crazy. Like, this wasn't supposed to happen. Like, I'm not supposed to be the guy that's even in here. And here I am getting a blue belt. And I know that a blue belt is still brand new, right? Like, I understand that. But I see it as somebody that just never gave up. And all the stuff that I've been through, I've so many outs, so many different times that I could have been like, oh, this hurts, that hurts, or I'm too busy for this. My son's brand new and I'm not sleeping, so I can't go train, all these things. And I stuck with it, right? After my first day, dude, I had the worst mat burn in the history of jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm literally like in the Jiu-Jitsu Hall of Fame for the worst freaking mat burn of all time. It's so gross. It's like pussing everywhere.
Ugh.
And I kept coming back. I don't know why I did, but I was really proud of myself, and really, really just like one of the cooler things of like getting promoted. And so, yeah, I kind of knew it was coming because I kind of almost got the ultimatum of like, hey, you either compete at white belt or you just train and you get your blue belt. Like, it was kind of one or the other. And I didn't really feel like, I didn't want to just be given a blue belt just because it was a time thing. I was like, no, I need to go earn that and go compete. And so got the bronze and then came home with the blue belt. So that was cool. Yeah.
What did you what were your emotions like as he's untying and retying that new blue belt? What was going through your mind? Obviously you just said like it wasn't supposed to happen, but I know every time I got promoted, there was some, like, it was kind of emotional, man. Like, it's a lot of hard work to go into every belt, especially white belt. Even that first time you tie that white belt, there's a lot that goes into it that you need to be proud of. Like, what was going through your mind emotionally as you're getting that blue belt tied on you?
Yeah, no, super emotional because so like the last straw for me to get into jiu-jitsu was my son. So real quick, just in case I haven't mentioned it, my son's going to be 4 in January. So I know that I want him to train. I did not want to be one of those parents that makes their kid train, but then they go sit in the corner and don't train themselves, especially if they're giving advice and that sort of thing. It's like, hey, bro, you don't even know what you're talking about. I didn't want to be that dad that told his son to go do something that he wouldn't do. So I wanted to be the example. And so when I got that blue belt, it was like, yeah, I actually belong here. Not that I'm not saying that no white belt belongs at jiu-jitsu. Everybody listening, you all belong at jiu-jitsu, regardless of how long you've been training or your background. But again, I just felt more legit. Like, okay, if he has questions, hey, son, I have this different colored belt now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and again, like he was probably on the phone, like my wife's just trying to keep him quiet or whatever, as I'm getting promoted, like he doesn't care.
Yeah.
And who knows if he cares on the next promotion or not. But again, it just kind of was a little bit of that, like, okay, this is legit now. Like, I actually know a little bit of jiu-jitsu, right? And I know what it's like to almost get put to sleep and have to tap. Like, I know what it's like to have somebody almost go to sleep and have to tap. Like, I've had these experiences now that I can then share with him, right? And they're only going to grow and compound on themselves by the time he's ready. So the reason why I got into jiu-jitsu was him. And so as I'm getting that promotion, I'm like, yeah, I'm preparing myself even better to teach him. And getting that blue belt again was just like solidified, like, yeah, we're actually moving in the right direction. And so with all that in mind, I'm getting super emotional. Like, I played it cool. Internally though, I'm like, all right, like, yeah, man, this wasn't supposed to happen. You put in the work, you deserve this. Like, yeah, now it's time to really have fun, because I always felt like at a white belt, when I would ask questions or I would try new things, it was always like, you're a white belt, just survive. And I'm like, oh, I understand. Thank you for that. But also, I'm surviving, to my best
Yeah.
of my ability. But also, when I survive and I don't attack or I don't sweep, I don't do anything else, I'm just a punching bag. Like, I don't like that. And so now at blue belt, you kind of have a little bit more credibility in what you're
Hmm.
asking and then what you're trying. So I really, really appreciated that. And I said this on another podcast, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going to treat my blue belt years as my slutty college years. And I'm going to try so many different things. I'm going to try, X guard. I'm going to try all these weird guards. I'm going to try collar sleeve. I'm going to, go for this submission. I'm going to start mixing in some triangles even here and there, So like all these things I'm just going to start experimenting with and having fun, because I feel like blue belt does, again, give you some credibility. Like, okay, you do know what you're doing, but also like, freaking blue belt, look at him trying all these weird things,
Yeah.
like, I don't have my game yet, right? I have my go-tos, but I don't have my like full on, like, okay, yeah, this is my system, so I get to discover that system. So that way, when I get to purple belt, I can, again, keep experimenting, but then also be like, okay, now I have my go-tos.
Yeah, it's your promotion sounds so much like mine, man. The similarities between you and I is like, if we lived closer, I'm sure we'd be friends, man. But
That's so
if
cool,
you would
dude.
allow
Yeah.
it, but
Heck yeah. No, we
no,
definitely get some rounds in for sure.
right? No, so like my um when I got promoted to purple, I woke up and I wanted to train first thing in the morning because I knew that my wife was gonna be busy the rest of the day with work and everything like that. I was like, I don't want a reason not to go. I'm just gonna wake up early and go to jiu-jitsu class. And I didn't know it at the time, but our 6:30 a.m. class had already gotten canceled. And so my wife was like, no, no, just go to the normal class. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. And then as I'm getting ready to leave, my wife is like, hey, I need to get the kids ready. That way, I'm gonna go do the CrossFit because our Jiu-Jitsu Academy is attached to our CrossFit gym. She's like, I'm gonna go do the 9:30 a.m. CrossFit class. It's on a Friday. And I was like, oh, okay. Sounds good. I was like, just bring the kids, put them on my side. I'll give them my phone, go do the class. Don't even worry about it. I'll take care of them when you guys get there. And so the class starts. My wife shows up late for CrossFit. And I was like, she gets in and I'm like, what is this lady doing? Like, just put the kids down and go do CrossFit. Like, what do you, I got it. Relax. She like sits down and I hear a plastic in Cody, my black belt's gi. And I was like, wait a second, what's
Yeah.
going on here? And then same thing. Cody's like, hey, this one's been a long time coming. One of my best friends, Travis, promoted a purple belt. And I was like, I haven't talked about it on the podcast still, but I was like, wait a second, this is happening.
Mhm.
And I'm super grateful for my wife and Cody because they were doing it behind my back. And both of them were like, we were texting each other, like, please let Travis not see me texting her or him and think that there's something going on or whatnot. We're just
Yeah.
trying to get your promotion. You know what I mean? And I'm like so grateful for those two. And it was an incredible experience, even getting promoted. And same thing as I was like trying not to get emotional during it. You know what I mean? Because it's been
Mhm.
such a long road. And doing jujitsu, being a blue belt in my eyes for such a long time, it was like, I was like, holy crap. And same thing, I felt like it legitimized me, like,
Mhm.
especially as like a content creator within the jujitsu space. All my friends that are black belts, they're like, dude, once you get to like blue belt's cool and you can make content at any belt level. But like, even within the jujitsu community, when a black belt or someone sees a purple belt, they're like, that guy knows jujitsu. Like he's in it for the long haul. You know what I mean? Like he's like, to your point, like, he's got his game. He understands like the positions and how did things work and whatnot. And so it was like a super cool and humbling experience of, getting promoted. I'm forever grateful for jujitsu and the community and everything like that and the people that I've gotten to talk to and whatnot. And it all accumulated into that moment of getting that purple belt tied around me. And I'm sure it's going to feel the same way at brown, and I'm sure it's going to feel the same way as black. But I just honestly didn't expect myself to take so long to get there. And it's no one else's fault besides mine with my inconsistent training, my family, and the pandemic and everything like that. But now it's like relit that fire. I'm like, let's go, man. Like I love training. I love showing up even more now. And I love tying that purple belt around my waist and going and stepping on the mats. You know what I mean? It's been so much fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to dip out in a second here, but I wanted
Yeah.
to continue on with that part about like feeling fired up because there's like that saying in at least for in the weightlifting community or like gym community, which is like like motivation will fade away. Like make sure you just have the discipline and you go like screw motivation, blah blah blah. Which I agree with. Right, you have the habit set in. Everything else will follow. With jujitsu, same thing, right? You have the habits, like you do the on the mat stuff and you do the off the mat stuff, so that way you can do better on the mats. But when you do have that crazy dose of motivation, I say ride that wave like you're freaking surfing on that thing because it is fleeting, right? It will come and go. There are going to be the days where you wake up, especially during the winter time. Thankfully, it doesn't get too cold out here in Sacramento, but those days, it's just like, like, dude, like my bones ache a little bit more today, and like, it's freaking cold.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I touch the mats, it's gonna be cold. You're just like, dude, I'm tired, but I'm already awake. Let's get going. And then you have the other days where you're like, you can't hit the ground fast enough. You're like, let's freaking go. Like, I cannot wait to get there.
Yeah.
I say ride those days and appreciate those days and freaking use that momentum to like, again, do a little bit extra on those days, because the days where you don't want to do the little bit extra, pull back and be like, yeah, dude, maybe I feel this way because I'm freaking exhausted. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, right? Shit, that's like proof that you are working hard. But again, when you feel that motivation, I just like to say, like, dude, ride that way, but don't do it like to your detriment.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, use that day to like maybe go earlier, right? Get more warmed up or do the extra things that you normally don't want to because you don't have that motivation, because it's only going to be a positive anyways. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I know you got to go. I got two quick things. My last question I always like to ask every guest, no matter their belt level. If you could give one piece of advice to a brand new white belt, what would it be?
Brand new white belt. Nasal breathe. I know that if you're not already practicing that right now, it sounds impossible. Like you might have allergies, you might have a deviated septum. But what I like to tell some of my partners, especially if we're like just drilling or we're flow rolling or something, like, hey, if you have to breathe through your mouth, you're training too hard. Slow down, catch your breath, and try to nasal breathe. What I've noticed is that when I nasal breathe, is I can see things a lot better. So like I'm calm, I'm chill, nasal breathing. Dude, that's a window. Oh my God, let me jump through that window, and a window of opportunity. And then when I start getting too excited and I try to like sprint through that window and I start mouth breathing, that window shuts because I get too excited, I get a little spazzy. And so what that will do though is it brings everything down, brings the heart rate down, brings the mind down, brings the calmness with it. And so again, that allows you to kind of really see things and move slowly. And like Cassio told me, not fight back, right? That's what nasal breathing will do for you. Just give it a shot, right? Especially during like some warm up rounds. See what you can do with just breathing through your nose.
Perfect. And if anyone wants to check out your podcast, Mark Bell's stuff, your online academy and stuff like that, where can they find you at?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything really just through like Instagram. So at I am Andrew Z on Instagram, the little like link thing has pretty much everything. So fitness, men's health, sexual health, diet, all things like that dudes are into. It's gonna be at Mark Bell's Power Project. We do have a website. I think it's just markbellspowerproject.com or no, powerproject.live. Goodness. Good on me for promoting. And then the DMs, that's just anywhere you can find, podcast. You can also check that out if you're like driving, you want to like a direct link, just pursue podcasting.com/DMS. So DMs is like the easiest way to find it. Again, we're a brand new show, so we don't have a dedicated website. So I just use like a little bit of the backbone of my personal website. And so my stuff, like I just said, is pursuepodcasting.com. That's where I teach people how to do what we're doing right now. So if you have a message, you have something to sell, you have a brand, you have something that, you have a message that you need to get out into the world, it's your responsibility to do that. And I think the best way to do that is through a podcast. And if you don't know where to start or how to maybe, get to the next level, I can help you out with that. And that's again at pursuepodcasting.com.
Perfect. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time today. This is the longest conversation I had in a while, so it's
Sick.
been a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, if I
well,
didn't
guys,
have anywhere to go, man, I would stay on here,
no,
but
you're good. You're
I'm
good, brother.
actually
Like,
kinda late.
I'm gonna go play some video games anyways, but
Sick. Oh, what are you playing right now?
I'm playing WoW right now, so I got
Okay,
back into
okay.
World of Warcraft. So,
That's dude, my Xbox has collected nothing but dust since my son was born, and I want to get back into, like, the new college game, and, like, I'm like, like, it's just not gonna work. It just
yeah.
won't work, but, we'll see. Capcom versus SNK2 is getting a remake, so I might have to come out of video game retirement to play that game. We'll see, though.
All right, guys. Well, make sure you guys go check out all the Andrew stuff down there. Make sure you guys, like I said, follow me everywhere, Elbows High everywhere, 5-star review, and we'll catch you next time. Remember, no oil checks here. Peace.